Supreme Court is declining to weigh in on the case of a teenager convicted of rape and murder and featured in the Netflix documentary series Making a Murderer.
The court's decision not to hear the appeal leaves in place a lower court ruling against Brendan Dassey. Dassey, just 16, when he told investigators that he helped his uncle Steven Avery rape and murder photographer Teresa Halbach back in 2005. No physical evidence linked Dassey to the crimes, but a jury convicted him based on his statements to two sheriff's office investigators.
Strang was one of Steven Avery's defense attorneys, and he joins us today. Great to see you, Dean. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me back.
So the Supreme Court decided it will not take this case. What is your reaction to that, and why do you think they made that decision?
I think it's really unfortunate, not just for Brendan Dassey, but because the court really hasn't taken a case involving a juvenile confession in 50 years or more.
And that's specifically what Dassey's lawyers were asking, right?
Right, and we, I think as a matter of neuroscience, we know a great deal more about juvenile brain development now than we did in 1968. So it's really quite unfortunate systemically beyond for Brendan Dassey. The why, the court never comments on why it doesn't agree to hear a case unless someone dissents, and there wasn't at least a published dissent here. But, what I can say is the odds are always long against you if you're asking the Supreme Court to hear a case. The United States Supreme Court takes about 1 in 100, roughly, petitions that are brought to it. I think the odds are a little better than that here, but still you're looking at long odds.
Yeah, and you were talking about the neuroscience and the teen brain, the innocent, or whatever the group is at Northwestern that is representing him. They said that teenagers are more likely to have, coerced confessions and that sort of thing.
False confessions by people under 18 are a major contributor to convicting the innocent, for kids especially. The rate of false confessions for people under 18 is even higher than the rate for cognitively disabled adults. So this is a major problem, and Brendan Dassey is sort of emblematic of that problem, but by no means unique. There are hundreds or thousands of kids from whom really questionable and probably untrue confessions have been elicited and who remain in prison.
Go ahead.
It's always tough to kind of track the court process here. What is next for a Brendan Dassey? What would be the next step that his attorneys can do?
Well, what they can try to do is seek a new trial based on newly discovered evidence, which would be, something other than this probably altogether. That process would start back in trial court in Manitowoc. And I know that they're aware of that and they're looking at what the next step might be, but as a categorical matter, it would be somewhere in that realm of newly discovered evidence and going back to state court.
Does this decision potentially have any impact on Steven Avery's pursuit of a new trial?
No, none at all. No effect at all on Steven Avery's case. I think what happens in Steven Avery's case, because he's seeking a new trial based on newly discovered evidence, conceivably could affect Brendan's case, but the reverse is not true here.
With the Miranda rights thing, it said that because his mom had waived Miranda rights and allowed her son to testify, or to at least talk to investigators back when we saw that video with the detectives interrogating him. What is allowed? I mean, what is a 16-year-old supposed to do in that situation? The mom has to give the detectives permission, and she did so? I don't know that we saw that.
No, if you're in custody, it's really up to a 16-year-old to ask for a parent or ask for a lawyer, which is a problem in and of itself. The real problem here is that Brendan Dassey's statements weren't the product of his consciousness or his conscience. They were the product of the imaginations and manipulations of two law enforcement officers, and that's pretty clear because it was videotaped. So you see a snippet of that videotape on Making a Murderer. I've seen all of the videotape. It just doesn't get any better.
And even if intellectual challenges are an issue, that doesn't sway it in any way.
It's a factor that courts are supposed to consider, but this would have been a great opportunity for the Supreme Court to give a little bit more updated advice on just how you ought to consider learning disabilities or youth specifically, and so this is a missed opportunity to do that. The court will have to take this up at some point because, again, Brennan Dassey, unfortunately, is not in a unique situation.
Well, almost 30 years old now. I always tell people, if you haven't seen Making a Murderer, watch it. It's a great watch. It's a great binge watch. That's what I did last year.
Are you participating in the sequel?
I have no idea when or what the sequel will include.
Okay.
I really don't.
Oh, so you're, at this point, you're not
being coy about that. You know, that's up to the filmmakers and Netflix, and I don't have the foggiest idea when or what it will be about.
It's a great watch, though, and if you like legal stories, I mean, there's a lot of insight that series gives into the work that goes on.
And the justice
and it's
system.
always great to have you here, Dean.
Yeah, great to see you, Dean. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you much.
It is